Um, Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here this afternoon. This is the second webinar for the English Center of Universidad de Atacama. This is organized by me and by Professora Pilar Franco. And the topic of every session is to discuss, share, experiences regarding the challenges and strategies we are employing to teach languages using distance learning, right? And now, before we continue, I would like to let Professora Pilar Franco welcome everyone here and start this webinar. Professora?
Okay, yes, good afternoon. And also welcome to everyone to this conversation that's something we need to share. I think that it is very important to share our experiences in this field that nobody has real, let's say, knowledge. We are not working on a blended or be-learning, let's say, programs. So we have been implementing be-learning in certain way, okay, with this, for the UDA English Center. We have this, let's say, unit that works for the whole community in the University of Atacama. We teach Englishes, okay, we teach English for all of the programs at the university. We have at least 15 programs now in the center. We are, let's say, working with 800 students, and they belong to different programs. We have people from engineering, we have people from medicine, from nursing, from the Faculty of Humanities, the pedagogies, and geology, and many other, let's say, programs. And the next semester we will also be working with a technological, let's say, faculty, where the techniques develop their competences. So we are working, as Elizabeth said before, with Moodle for at least 3 years, okay, for the autonomy of the students. We are working with some, let's say, most of our programs are redesigned based on competencies. So we have the Créditos SST, and we have to deal also with the autonomy of the students. So for that purpose, we developed, okay, Moodle, a number of activities, a framework for Moodle that was kind of, we were kind of prepared for what was coming without knowing. So it was something we were lucky about it. Okay, so we have created this platform, and all of the teachers are working for at least 3 years with the platform, with Moodle. And even though we have been working with Moodle, it has been something new for us. Okay, we have been, let's say, working with the students. Students were not used to, okay, work online. They were not, let's say, prepared. We have to face several problems sometimes. We, teachers and students, do not have the right conditions sometimes to work, okay, in a class on Moodle. So they do not want to be seen sometimes. They just have their, let's say, name, okay, their face there, but they are not real present in the class. And we understand sometimes they have kids, they have to take care of other things at the moment we are working. So I think we have great challenges, okay, to overcome. And we are trying to do our best. And as I said, well, without being experts, we have been dealing with these challenges. And I think students are very happy to be working with us, to be working this way. And at the moment, it has also been something very, let's say, in certain way, it has been good for us to be working in this way, because we are a very small group of teachers and we have a big number of students. So when we were having face-to-face classes, we had courses with 25 students, no more than that. So we require more teachers for teaching. Now we incremented, we have more students in each group for Moodle and even for the synchronic classes. So it has been kind of an opportunity for us that we do not have the right number of teachers at the moment. We have some teachers with medical leave, and so we need some, let's say, extra teachers to work with the number of students we have. So that's kind of the experience we are, let's say, having at Universidad de Atacama. We are also being asked to work with engineers in a special program, and we are also being asked to work with the students who are doing the doctoral programs and the master's programs. So we have two other big, let's say, challenges there. So that's what can I tell you about our experience in Universidad de Atacama. Then if you have questions, we will be glad to answer them.
And share the experiences, right?
Yes.
Okay, from now on, I'm going to introduce the presenters that are here with us tonight. And before that, I would like to welcome the people that have recently arrived to our webinar. Okay, there we go. First, we have Jacqueline Arguil, Master in TEFL, Teaching of English as a Foreign Language from Universidad Austral de Chile. Jacqueline is an English teacher and a trained primary teacher with a master's in TEFL, as I said. She has worked in different schools in Santiago, Patagonia, and in with primary school children. At the present, she lives with her family in the countryside near Coyhaique. She works in Universidad Austral de Chile at their campus in Patagonia. She teaches English and teaching methodology on the primary teacher training course and English for the technical courses that are part of the campus. She has also trained as a body therapist and works with Bach flowers, and one of her interests is trying to develop a holistic approach to teaching that incorporates the concept of integrating mind, body, and emotions in the teaching and learning process. Interesting. Verónica González Temer, Doctor in Language and Communication, Departamento de Inglés de la Facultad de Historia, Geografía y Letras de la Universidad Metropolitana de la Ciencia de la Educación, UMCE. Ella holds a position as a lecturer in phonetics and international linguistics at UMCE since last year. Verónica was granted a scholarship from the Chilean government to pursue an MA in phonetics and phonology at the University of York in 2012 and a PhD in language and communication at the same institution right after. She researched food assessment in Chilean Spanish interaction using the methods of conversation analysis. During that time, she presented her work at various international conferences and spent a month visiting as a visiting fellow of University of Helsinki. After a successful PhD defense, Veronica held an interactional linguistic teaching position at the University of Leeds for a few years before coming back to Chile. These days, she is starting to research supervision meetings and classroom interaction in TEFL using CA, conversation analysis. She keeps working hard towards building a sense of community among Latin American CA researchers. Finally, we have Paulina Subiabre, a doctor in English language from Universidad del Biobío. She is an English teacher and she also works in translation in Universidad del Biobío. She holds a PhD from University of Glasgow. Her teaching experiences are carried out in national universities such as del Biobío, Universidad de Valparaíso, la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso, y en el abroad, I mean, University of Glasgow and University of Lahore. I think that is in Pakistan, right? Her research is related to sociolinguistics of English as a foreign language. Recently, she is working in language identity of literary text and discourse, and she has worked in Pakistan. She's a peer reviewer from Revista Signos, from the Pontificia Universidad Católica Valparaíso. She belongs to the ANIP Association, which is an institution for researchers, Chilean researchers. She's also the secretary of RIEDI, which is a red de intercultural studies in Chile. She is a member of the researchers in humanities and arts in Chile, and she's also taking part in research projects in networks, in also regarding literature, Mapuche literature, in EFL, and also independent projects. And having introduced our presenters, I'm going to ask Jacqueline to start her presentation. Jacqueline?
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Elizabeth, hi. Elizabeth's already told you a little bit about me. So I'm English, but I lived in Patagonia for 20 years, and I'm a primary teacher, but now I'm teaching at the university. So my teaching context is what she said. The University Campus Patagonia has the technical careers and the university together. So I teach on the tourism technical career, which is a 2-year course where they're learning quite basic, like up to A2 English, to be able to communicate with clients. And then I teach on the primary teacher training course, where we teach the different levels of English, and then the methodology. So that's the teaching context I work in. And Pili was talking about how you're working with Moodle. So this year we have the challenge, one of the challenges is that not only from one day to the next that we went online with our classes with no preparation, but also in March we changed from an old virtual platform to Cividuk Moodle without any chance to have any training. So we're kind of our learning curve is a bit like that, very vertical. So I said to Elizabeth, when she asked me to come and talk on this webinar, it was quite interesting because basically since March, I'm probably the same as everyone else. You've been like a hamster on a wheel, working. And this was the first opportunity where I actually sat down and reflected about March till July. I suddenly realized, wow, it's over 100 days we've been working like this. So it was a nice opportunity to reflect. So I'm going to ask Elizabeth whether she can go to the first or the second slide, which is where I thought, as we've only got 10 minutes, I thought of four aspects of going online or teaching that for me has been the biggest challenge. It's the next slide on. The next one, that one. Okay. So I found the first challenge is the problem with the internet connection. Which I know is a general problem in Chile, but in Patagonia, it's particularly bad. So that's one of the challenges we have. Another is the new technology. Most of us are having to learn a lot of new technology very quickly. From one week to the next, we had to adapt to learning this using platforms, using different apps. And so that's been quite a challenge. Also, number 3, I put down teaching strategies, because I feel like I've had to adapt my teaching strategies to accommodate this new context, which is very different in lots of ways from face-to-face teaching. And the last point I reflected on was the stress of the whole situation for teachers. Because I think not only has it been very stressful, the change to online, which is we've had to learn a lot of things very quickly, new techniques and strategies, but also we're a lot of time in front of the computer, lot more preparation time, and plus we're living a worldwide crisis, which is very stressful. So I think that those for me were the 4 areas of challenges I'm facing. Elizabeth, can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so internet connection. My summary of the situation is you always have to have a plan B, because I'm sure it's happened to you as well. Your screen freezes, your students drop out, they can't hear the video, your amazing PowerPoint just doesn't go up, they can't see it. Half of them can't, they like you say, they don't, you're teaching to black voids because they don't put the cameras on, some because they don't want to. A lot of the time I teach in the morning, and a lot of them are still in pajamas. But also the internet connection here isn't strong enough. So initially I found that very stressful because you never knew what was going to happen. And then I suddenly came up with a plan. There's some things you can control and some you can't. The internet connection I can't control. So what I've tried to do is have sort of alternative activities or an alternative plan for when I have problems with internet. One on this slide I put using the chat, because sometimes the students can't participate because they don't have sound something. So I started experimenting and ask questions, and then if they can't use their microphones, they write in the chat and I read it out. And another strategy, basically I went for strategies that were low-tech strategies, so more chance of controlling them. And another a strategy that's been very useful is using WhatsApp groups. Each class has got their own class WhatsApp, and at the beginning of the class I delegate someone who's in charge of taking screenshots of everything we're doing, everything visual we're doing, and then they send it straight to the WhatsApp groups during the class. So the students who can't connect, or their connection's very bad and can't see, at least they can carry on participating through the WhatsApp group. And in the last of cases, I sit with a little whiteboard behind my desk, and if everything else fails, I get out my little whiteboard and my whiteboard marker, and I feel very happy, because I feel like, oh, I'm back in my element. I'm back home in the face-to-face classroom. So those were just a few. Now I'm just going to have to take a minute, because my dog sneaked into the room and I've got to get the dog, something I can't control. So give me 1 minute while I get the dog. Joey, come. Excuse me, I was actually watching a funny thing the other day about a psychologist saying that one of the things that have happened with teaching online is that we can't fake it anymore. You're seeing our homes, our lives, our children, our dogs, everything. So now you've just seen a bit of my real life. Okay, Elizabeth, the next slide, please. The second thing I thought with when I was reflecting is what's been a challenge for me is having to deal with so much learning of new technology so quickly. I'd never even heard before March, and one day to the next we have to use it. So I'm not a person who has mottos, but I have decided my motto for 2020 is practice makes perfect. So I found my first challenge was getting onto, we teach with Zoom, so getting onto Zoom and learning how to use all the different functions, interactive whiteboard, breakout rooms, kind of becoming familiar with all the aspects of Zoom. And then, because I find technology quite a challenge, I used to practice the classes. So what I would do is I would call a Zoom meeting on my computer, then I would set it up as a student on my phone. And then I used to give myself classes so that I could see both sides of the class to check what I was teaching, see what the students see. And then once I started feeling more confident with the Zoom, I started setting myself a goal to try and learn new tools to teach with online, because otherwise I think for the students it's very repetitive. They see a PowerPoint and then you're talking, a PowerPoint and you're talking. So I set myself the goal of trying to every tool, sometimes once a month, but every 2 or 3 weeks, trying to learn a new tool to integrate into my classes. And I've discovered lots of very interesting apps and programs to use. For example, there are lots of programs with quizzes like Bamboozle, Quizlets, where some of the quizzes are made or you make your own. I've started using a platform called Nearpod, which makes really good interactive presentations. And then also I've found a program called Pixton, which is for making fantastic cartoons. So the challenge, although sometimes it's been stressful dealing with the technology, I feel like I've developed a lot more teaching skills to be able to implement in my class. And once you learn one skill, for example, making a quiz, what I try and do is try and repeat it in lots of different classes with different content. So it's not overwhelming doing it every time, creating something new every time. Elizabeth, the next slide, please. The next biggest challenge was also adapting my teaching strategies for this new context, especially as English is taught with a communicative approach. We need to be teaching with a maximum participation and interaction between the students, which initially I thought was going to be very difficult. But now I've started to get the hang of it. So when I started planning my classes, I started thinking, what's important in the classes? So I thought, it's very important to create a good relationship with the students, especially ones you don't know, to create a positive learning environment, and also to maximize interaction, like group and pair work with the students. So for the ideas I've come up, or the strategies I've used, say, for creating a good classroom atmosphere, environment, and the teaching relationship, is I always start my class with fun interactive games, quizzes, questions, even things like go to YouTube and you do things like guess the sound, where would you like to be today? Anything that's interactive, but it checks their previous knowledge of the subject you're going to teach, motivates them. But the main reason I try and create fun things is to engage the students, so that at least within the first 5 minutes, they get into the Zoom classroom and they're enthusiastic and motivated with the class. And that's worked quite well. And in my efforts to maximize interaction in students, I only work with Zoom, but for example, using the interactive whiteboard's been very good, because students can answer questions, you can see who's written things, you can play lots of games where they interact together. And Zoom has got this, the super Zoom function of breakout classes. So those are small groups, virtual classrooms, and those are fantastic. So you can teach to the whole class, and then you can set them up in pairs, small groups, whatever size you want. Set them a task, then you go and visit them in the classrooms. And for me, that's been the best way to get to know the class, the students, talk to them, support them. And what I did discover a good technique to do, because often you send them into the classroom, and like in your face-to-face class, they've forgotten what they have to do by the time they get there. And you can't put the instructions, you can't have a whiteboard going at the same time. So what I usually do is I put the instructions before they go into the classrooms. I put the instruction on the interactive whiteboard, and I put structures to help them scaffold their activities. And then they send it to their WhatsApp group. So then they have the instructions of what they're going to do and the support structures they need once they're on to be able to do their independent task. And that's worked very well. And the last, Elizabeth, can I have the last slide? So this is last, but definitely not least, because as I mentioned at the beginning, both teachers and students, I feel we're under an amazing amount of stress. Everything's new, especially my university, where the students as well are learning a new virtual platform. And I think that you can't undervalue the importance of the well-being of us as teachers, and the well-being of the students. And I was just thinking about it. I think with us as a teacher, I think it's very important that you recognize the symptoms of stress, because, you know, there's some people who get insomnia, anxiety, irritability, you can't eat, or the opposite, which is unfortunate, you eat too much, comfort eating. You know, there are fears, that the fact that we have the pressure, so little control, because we're living a double stress. We're living the stress of suddenly, from one day to the next, going from face-to-face classes to all online. Plus, we're living a world crisis where we have very little control over our lives, and we're stuck at home. Often, as Pili mentioned, we are also multifunctional. You're giving classes at home, but you've got the kids, the husband, the dog, the this, the everything. You're doing a lot at the same time. So I think it's very important that you recognize when you get symptoms of stress, and that you do something about it. And you try and incorporate things for your well-being into your daily routine, little things that help you relax or help you do something you enjoy. I mean, even simple things like I've downloaded on my phone a free Fitbit. So I'd set myself 5 steps a day, and I walk up and down my stairs in my house, and I walk around my house, and because for me to relax, I need movement. But you have to think how you're feeling and what could help you feel a bit better, knowing how you tick yourself. And I think that is very important to be able to survive what we're going through and come out with an okay state of mental health at the end. And I think the same is important for your students. So I think it's very important to empathize and to support your students. One of the techniques I use is at the end of every Zoom class, the students always, when the class finishes, I always say I'm going to stay online. So if anyone wants to come and talk to me, and it doesn't have to be about the class, if they've got any problems or they just want someone to talk to, I'm always there and I can always listen to them. So at least they know they've got some space in their day when they've got someone who they can advise them, or they can just talk to. Because I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but when you talk to some of the students, you realize some of the conditions they're living in are very precarious. So those were when I did my reflection from March to July the 2nd, 102 days at home. Those were my reflections about the challenges. And I'm sure some of you will share some of the same challenges. And I hope that perhaps, one or two of the tips or the strategies I've used might be able to help you too. So that's it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
So Veronica is our next presentation. Before that, thank you very much, Jacqueline. And now Veronica is going to share with us her work, and I have to share her presentation, right?
Yes, because I can try. Wait a minute.
If you want, but I am downloading your presentation right now. Yeah, I have it with me.
Hi, it kicked me out for some reason.
Can you? Because I have your presentation here. Whatever you please.
Let me just try. Just give it a try. Oh, yes.
Can you?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Now, yes.
Good. Lovely. Okay.
Oh, that's York. Beautiful York.
Yes. Okay. Can you just tell me if you can see all right the presentation now? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the lovely introduction again. And so today I'd like to tell you about my experience and that of my phonetics team at UMCE. I am the phonetics coordinator of the English department, but we are essentially a team of 3 academics teaching the 4 phonetics modules that run throughout the 2nd and 3rd year of our teacher training program. So the things I'll be talking about come from conversations with my team and experiences and the suggestions that we have been able to come up with. So I just wanted to acknowledge them. So I'd like to begin talking about some of the general issues our students are facing during this pandemic. As soon as we began working from home, we were faced with the fact that many students either didn't have a computer at home or they had to share it with other members of their household. And it was also the case that if they had smartphones, they might have been old ones that didn't really support the platforms that we wanted to use. And of course, many students didn't even have internet access at home. So early on, we could assess those needs, and in terms of providing supplies, it was not a quick process, but the university could supply laptops and internet plans for students who couldn't really afford them. So we had solved somehow an issue. But then there were certain issues that are perhaps even more complex. For example, students not having a quiet space to be able to attend online classes or doing their homework, students getting jobs who didn't used to work before, getting jobs to support their families as other members may have lost theirs, students with dependents who have to care for the children, and others at the time the class is being held. So to overcome those issues, the one solution we could think of providing was making the class recordings available throughout, through Google Drive on the platform we use. And sometimes students also ask me to upload them to YouTube, as they have data-free access on their mobiles to it. And of course, we became really aware of the fact that we needed to be flexible with assessment deadlines, and we are expanding the time frame we usually gave students to hand in their work. And even for online tests, the time allotted is more than usual to allow room for technical difficulties. And then all of this meant that we had to reconsider the way in which we had been using technology so far. Before the pandemic, we had been using two platforms. One is UCampus, which many of you might know, which is more of an admin site, repository if you want, although it does offer tools for tasks and tests and blogs, for example. And the other one is eDistancia, which is a Moodle-based virtual learning environment, essentially made for e-learning. But our issue at that point was that we had actually moved from eDistancia, which we had never exploited to its full potential, to UCampus only last year, at the end of last year. So most teachers and students feel more comfortable with UCampus, and as this pandemic caught us off guard, we just intuitively continued using it, just to avoid having all the information scattered around in different places. But if we had the time, we would probably feel more inclined to, to start exploring our Moodle-based platform again. And then there was another challenge that I came across that was somehow unexpected to me, assuming that our digital native students were going to easily navigate the technologies that we are using to do online teaching and learning. So not only us, but our students had to begin learning about the different possibilities offered by these platforms and using other apps and software. So from scanning transcriptions, for example, at the beginning, I received some blurry pictures of their notebooks. So from doing that to joining two audio files together. And one way to overcome these issues was to signal clear paths to the information on the platform. So for example, saying, because probably you have realized that this is just a constant sort of going and coming of emails at all times, but signaling the information in a clear way, saying this is available at UCampus, arrow materials, arrow week 2, arrow workshop key. That has been really useful. And also making sure to suggest free apps and software to use for things that we assume they might know how to do. So that saves them time and me trouble as well. So suggesting the use of things like Cam Scanner or Audio Joiner or Online Converter, things that we as teachers might take for granted, but our students have probably never used them before because they didn't have the need to do it. So our biggest challenge probably so far has been how to work with oral practice. So of course I'm talking about phonetics, but and reading off phonetic transcriptions as well. But I think this applies to everyone who has to work with language. So the different solutions we have come up with are asking students to work in groups using the breakout feature on Zoom, which has already been mentioned. It's a very useful tool, and these groups, of course, ideally should be of no more than 4 students if they are going to practice in front of one another. And so the idea is that they read to one another and give each other feedback before we get to listen to the members of those groups entering those rooms. Before this, it was really easy just to spend perhaps half an hour, because we tend to have no more than 20 students per class, especially for phonetics, a language, and those kind of things that require a lot of practice. It was really easy for me to spend half an hour just going around and trying to listen to all of them. But these days, that is more tedious if you want to do it online. So creating these smaller groups gives them the chance to feel comfortable talking to their peers, and also practice more maybe, and then we can just get to those groups and talk to them as well. And I'd just like to show you some of the websites and apps that we have been using to keep our students engaged and also overcome some of the issues that I have already mentioned. So you might know some of these, so I'm sorry if you already know them, but hopefully they will be useful to at least a person in this session. So the first one is Padlet, and this is a very useful website. You can upload a few recordings, for example. You can use a number of features on it, just write comments or put pictures on, up. But I use it with recordings. And you can upload a few recordings of the texts that they have to practice. I've asked other members of staff, for example, and even my own daughter, who grew up in England, to record some of these audio files for students to listen. And then students can comment on these audio files that I post using the voice function as well, so I can listen to them, and then I can give them written feedback on what as you can see on the screen. So very good. Just make sure there you move from the velar nasal into the schwa. Sorry, when you say long ago. And then, do you mean this? Yes. So it's a good platform to engage into those kind of interactions. And the only issue with this platform is that these days you're not allowed. You're only allowed 3 Padlets, and then you have to upgrade if you want to continue to use it. So I've used it once or twice with each module for very specific tasks. And it's very likely that I'll have to use a different email account if I want to use it again. You can always cheat the system somehow, but it's not ideal in that sense, but very useful. And another one that I've been using for some time, actually, even before this pandemic, is Mentimeter. And you need to create a free account on Mentimeter and just get cracking. You can create different types of polls and quizzes, but I really like the word cloud function for the kinds of things that I use them for. So, for example, after giving my students individual feedback on their oral production, I ask them, what are the features or sounds I have told you to work on? And students are asked to go to menti.com and use a code, okay? And what they will see on their phones, or if they're using a computer, it will be the same thing. They will see this, okay? And they will have to enter 5 words or sound symbols representing what you have told them to work on. And what you can see here are the results, and they start just showing up as they are entering their answers. And the bigger symbols, of course, represent there's a higher number of students who have named those sounds as an issue to work on. And this is a great way, I think, to raise awareness of their own process and to make sure that they are listening to you actively and not to put students on the spot as well, okay? So the issue with Menti is that it has to be used online. So, there and then. So you can only work with the students who are connected to a live session. Another question, and just another example here, is that what are the sounds that should represent a difficulty for Spanish speakers? So again, raising awareness, or perhaps even demystifying some beliefs, and especially connecting content to their pedagogical practice. And Kahoot, I don't know if you have used it. I really love it. I'm only beginning to create quizzes on it. And now its premium version is free for teachers during COVID times. So I'm going to try to use it as much as I can. And here you can create all sorts of interactive activities as well, such as quizzes, true or false items, or puzzles. And again, students vote online using their mobiles, but they have a set time and are given points. So this is a bit more competitive, but really fun as well. So I still have to play around with it, but I'm really excited that its premium version is free for us. And finally, I just wanted to show you a few of the websites that we've been using. So if there are any phonetics teachers around, or you need to teach pronunciation and you want your students to have a little bit more practice, these are websites and apps that we actually had included in our different syllabi as recommendations for our students. So they are actually part of every syllabus. So the first one is the clickable IPA chart that is from York University in Canada. So really useful. It's been around forever. And this is an interactive sagittal section. So it's really cool because you can just change the settings and then you get different pictures. So they can really see what's happening in the vocal tract as they are producing different sounds. These I use quite a lot for those students who can actually get to work on a computer for transcription exercises. I encourage them to use i2speak.com. That is a smart IPA phonetics keyboard. So as you type letter P, for example, you get all the possibilities of that look similar to the P letter, for example. And finally, a few apps. We don't really impose the use of these things because, for example, the IPA phonetics, which is amazing because John Essling is a really well-known and respected phonetician, is only available for iPhone. So, but there's also the Sounds app and the Say It app from, I think it's Oxford. And those two are available for iPhone and Android, Apple and Android as well. So we just encourage them to use them and to practice and to play around with those rather than assigning them things and assuming that they can actually access these things. So hopefully some of these suggestions will be useful to those of you who teach phonetics or pronunciation and other people as well. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica, for your presentation. I think even though some of them are very specific for phoneticians and for teachers in charge of that module in the pedagogy programs, I think they are still good idea for the rest of us or some of us. And I really also like the Kahoot one. And as you said, it is free, so we can actually probably try and use that one too. Thank you very much, Veronica.
You're welcome.
Before we move on, I would like to ask the audience to write down their questions in the chat, because after the round of presentation, I will read the questions for the presenters to tell us more about their experience, right? And now I move on to Paulina Subiabre, who is going to share her work with us. Thank you. Paulina. In the meantime, I would like to ask a question to both participants so far, and both of you have touched the same topic. There is now a blurred border between personal life and private life, and professional life here. while you're giving a presentation, where you're teaching a lesson, you have your dog, you have a probably barking, you have your baby crying, or I don't know, something is going on in your own house, or actually sharing your own personal space with the students. How are you dealing with that? And the other question that is very closely related to that, is the fact that even though we want to create break this barrier with the students and try to have a close interaction with them, they don't use the cameras. They prefer to keep it off, right? So how you both handle that? Veronica, can you start, please?
Okay. Yes. I don't know. I mean, it's at this stage we have a very strange situation at UMSA because we only finished last year's second semester. So we are actually, this is just our third week, I think, of the new academic year. So lots of the things that I've told you about, I try to work with these groups from last year. Lots of these other things are ideas of how we're going to deal with this, with facing students. We know that at some point we're going to have to see their mouths and have that one-to-one interaction. But I think at this time we're still kind of just trying to understand that these are very difficult times, that they are not doing well emotionally, that we need to be there for them as well. So trying to devote some sessions to actually talking to our students, and I think building the trust and actually getting to see them, because what we get actually is just cameras turned off most of the times as well. So I feel many times I could just, sort of get away with it. I can just teach a lecture. It's phonetics after all, and not really care. But I think there's also I'm a teacher, so I need to consider other things. But I don't have a definite answer yet. It's just things that are coming up, and at some point we're gonna have to have that face-to-face interaction somehow.
Jacqueline, can you
hear me now?
Sí, Paulina.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to answer or wait till after Paulina?
Shall we wait for
answer. No, just answer.
Okay, very, very briefly, I think it's the same as Veronica, because we're in a new territory, and I think the importance with interaction is creating a new kind of environment where they feel safe to expose themselves. And what I've tried doing, so that's my idea of trying to make, do lots of things to make them feel close to their classmates and have a bond with me, games and interactive things, fun things, so that they're not under pressure. But what I do, I have the same problem. You're talking to black spaces. So what I do is when I'm going to practice something, I say, please, just for the next 2 minutes, could you put your video on? And the first time they didn't, and then the next time 50%. So I think it's a process of gaining their trust and feeling safe, but then doing it in small measures. Just for this, because I need to help you with the pronunciation, put your video on, and then turn it off again. And that's worked quite well.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Paulina, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I do not have a presentation, and I'm not going to talk about specific strategies because I'm not how do you call methodologist? Okay, I'm a linguist. I work on phonetics and sociophonetics. So I'm going to give a point of view of the challenges we have faced, and I divided this talk into 4 parts. The first part is what we thought it was going to be like. The second part, what we now know. The third, what we need to understand. And the last thing, what we should remember. Okay, so what we thought it was going to be like this. At the first 2 weeks of this pandemic, it was, okay, I'm going to be more time at home, yay. But then we realized that, okay, I'm going to work on that later. Okay, so yeah, more time at home, no more time at the bus, no more time at work with unpleasant people. So yeah, good. Also, we thought that, okay, there are lots of websites and apps to go to. Everything is online. So cool. I had plenty of material to work with. And the third big thought we had is that students would finally put a good use to their phones. And basically everyone's online every day nowadays, okay? So our students are online all the time. So that's okay. But we now know that being more time at home is not necessarily a good thing. Okay, especially when you have kids. I have 2 kids. All my students have seen at least 1 or 2 tantrums of them complaining about why am I so much time in front of the computer. Okay, the second time is that, okay, there are way too many websites, and learning to handle all these websites and all this information and all these apps it's actually very time consuming. Okay, preparing these classes is also very time consuming. Giving feedback is more time consuming. Okay, and now we know that not everyone, as you said before, the 2 people that were talking before, not everyone is a netizen, and not everyone knows about netiquette. So you usually, when you give your students your WhatsApp, you're not giving an institutional WhatsApp. You're giving them your personal WhatsApp. So sometimes you get messages at 10 p.m. You get messages on Saturdays. You get messages on 10 p.m. on Sundays. Okay. So not everyone is a netizen. Not everyone is aware of the netiquette. And you just have to deal with that. And the last thing that we now know is that everyone is right, everyone is an expert, everyone has a voice. Even students, your students are like complaining about your methodological changes, or they're suggesting methodological changes, such as, okay, teacher, that's not the way you should teach that. So that's something that it's like a bit annoying about these new changes. We need to understand, this is the third part of this presentation, is that you as teachers are being asked to redefine practice that has not changed in decades in this initial training teachers, in pre-teachers. Okay. As the same as a school, universities are not changed at all in the last 50 years. And I think most of us are, at least were trained in the same way teachers are trained today. And suddenly there is this pandemic that changes everything, okay? We were not formed to teach online distance, okay? So it's all this teaching now, it's recent. We are facing new things. There's only recent research about ways of teaching, and we are right in the middle of the storm, okay? I wasn't like formed to teach online, and we are all doing this on the way. Okay, so I think that the most important part here that we need to understand is that we need to re-educate ourselves into this new academia. Okay, it has been shown that university does not form you in every possible aspect that you should be teaching. And in terms of our practice, these changes are happening way too fast for us to modify everything in a few months. Okay. Also, what is new online that we need to understand now that thank you. sorry, I know, is that there are new demands for teachers to be educating into these, I don't know if you heard this, skills for the 21st century that involve creativity, innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, etc. But I don't know if any of you, I have not been taught how to do that. Okay. Digital globalization is massive. Okay, there's a massive widening of knowledge nowadays. And actually, I don't think we are all as teachers prepared to work with that. Okay, so there is a new change that we start to re-educate ourselves into this new way of teaching, because we as teachers at university level, at schools, are not, well formed to teach online the way that it should be. Okay, so finally, not all our abilities are going to be relevant, but we should be able to balance them. Okay, we know that speaking is hard in classes when the groups are over 25 students. And in many universities, we have classes of 40 minutes. Okay, no more than 40 minutes. So these breakout rooms are proved to be very useful. Writing is also hard to assess, as it involves lots of times of your free time to give feedback with a similar number of students. Okay, so it's also very difficult too. What seems to be easier is reading, listening, and vocabulary building. I'm not going to talk about grammar, because basically grammar is a kind of obsolete. I'm not sure if it's obsolete, but yeah, everyone says that you're not supposed to be teaching grammar. Okay, and the last part that I also think that we should remember is that there is enough, even though there is enough evidence that the learning is more motivating when it's fun, I believe that as teachers, and this is a very personal opinion, okay, we are not entertainers. Okay, especially at university level. Okay, so I don't know why I have to be jumping in front of a screen just to make my students happy, because I'm supposed to be teaching professionals. So it's just a very personal opinion, and I think it's a bit of very pushy when people tell you, your classes have to be fun, so your students don't die trying to understand you or trying to learn. And finally, in this particular moment of pandemics, we have to think about the mental health of teachers, and try, as you said, try to connect emotionally with your peers. Work in teams, guys. If you're teaching, on university, we're not used to working teams. So I try to improve this and say, okay, guys, I'm going to prepare these grammar capsules, because I'm not going to teach grammar, so I'm going to prepare grammar capsules. So who wants to share that? Okay, alleviates a lot of work, the workload you have, sharing with other colleagues what you have. I'm teaching in these communicational classes for other programs. I'm not teaching in teaching the teaching program, English teaching program. But you have to share your load with other people, because you cannot, and you have all the right not to do it all by yourself, especially now. So that's basically what I wanted to say. Sorry if I went too fast, but I'm holding my telephone on my hands and it's a bit shaky. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulina. You have given us a thought-provoking presentation. I think you have.
That was the point.
You have really touched a lot of issues here.
You did.
And we thank you for your honesty. Clearly, it has been hard times for everyone here, not only students, also teachers, families, as I said the question before, there is no clear boundary between private and professional anymore.
I don't know whether it's just my personal experience teaching in Patagonia, but I haven't had problems with students being the experts in the classroom. A lot of the students comment that they miss
with the use of technology, probably.
Yeah, with the use of tech, with it. Yeah, I haven't had them saying, well, why aren't you using this app, and why don't you know how to do this on Zoom? So I haven't had a negative feedback, and I, as we all are, I'm learning. So sometimes you make mistakes, or I remember using the breakout rooms for the first time and I couldn't find the students, and then sitting there, and you know, like they're in my experience here, they're quite understanding. I've been quite honest from the beginning, so we're learning. I'm learning at the same time as you. If you have any suggestions of programs you've used or apps you've used, but the feedback my experience has been positive feedback to constructive feedback. I haven't, up till now, I haven't had criticisms about my methodology online.
Okay. Thank you. Veronica?
So yes, the 2 points that you're asking about actually overlap in my experience. It's not my own necessarily, but what's happened to some of my colleagues as well. So essentially, assessments have been the issue, summative assessments especially. We set up similar tasks. We began doing that, right? Say we had the experience of having that extra semester somehow. So we began setting up tasks in the same way we did before. However, some of my colleagues faced, for example, that they wanted to maintain certain control over what was being assessed, and at the time it was being assessed, and that meant that, for example, students had access to one question and then they couldn't go back to that question to check it again, you know, so they just moved on to the following question, and they didn't have the same experience they had doing a test or sitting a test in a classroom where you can easily go back to a question you didn't answer before, or, you know, just to check. So that was an issue. Students complain about that, and I'm not sure how I think they solved it somehow by saying, if you don't do really well, then you will have the opportunity to do something else, some extra work, and then make up for that mark. In my experience, I gave up a little bit. I said, there are no platforms of the ones available to me where I can actually upload an audio just to be listened and then listened to, and then not download it, for example. So I said, okay, I'm just gonna do a Google, you know, sort of document with the links to the audio. If they download them, so be it. And I will create a new test with new, you know, sort of contents next time. It's going to be probably similar. But what happened then is that I found essentially 5 versions of the answers in 40 tests. So I thought, next time I'm just going to do group work or something, because obviously they worked in groups to do this individual test. So those are the issues that we're still working on. We're having meetings with the experts at the university, trying to come up with neat instances of assessment which are good not only for us but for students as well. So it's really complex.
Paulina?
I usually find that technology mishaps are icebreakers. So when you start having like, oh guys, I don't know what's going on. Please, could you help me out? And they do. They help you. So technology is can usually be like one starting point to like provoke an answer on students. Okay, the same problem with assessment. We have to find a way in which students are not cheating. Because in my case, I have like exactly copies of the same answer. They don't even bother changing one word. But there's still so much to research and work out. The problem is that time is catching up. We need to do it fast, and we need to have exactly experts doing it, because I'm not prepared to do it. I don't know how to. Okay, so yeah, I don't know what to do. Basically, I don't know what to do with these guys.
Thank you, Paulina. Mauricio, ¿me escucha? Mauricio, ¿quisieras comentar algo? Mauricio Lacassette.
Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Muy bien, gracias
Good.
por estar con nosotros nuevamente en esta sesión.
Thank you for the invitation. And hello to Pili Franco. Okay, again, we've been in touch lately. Yeah, after all these years.
Yeah, hello. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, because okay. Yeah, no, I'm really pleased with all of you. The three presentations were very interesting, and I just was wondering about something that was kind of floating on the presentation. That is the opportunity that we have now to let our students to learn by themselves that we didn't have before, and that's something that it's very possible to get through this kind of technology. I have realized in my classes that despite the fact that like one of the presenters, I think it was Paulina, said that we are not like entertainer and all that. I think that the role today is kind of a facilitator, and that a facilitator. That's what we have to do, to let our students have the chance to do their own learning, because 50 minutes is not enough. And now that we have to teach only no more than 50 minutes, because that's not advisable to go through a class for 90 minutes. So they are going to have a class of English 3 times a week, and that's impossible. They are not going to be able to learn English in 3 hours a week. So what we have to do, I think, is to teach them how to develop their own techniques, and to what, for example, Jacqueline is doing very well, is letting them to work together. And I'm sure, Jacqueline, that your students keep on working after class, and they keep on getting in touch through WhatsApp and all that, and that's great, because what they are doing is using the language in a real life situation. So what we are doing is just giving them the tools for them to develop their own language through the technology. So that's something that we shouldn't forget. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Mauricio. What happens to me?
Well, in my case, I have I'm teaching, for instance, in natural resources engineering program, technical English, and I have 40 minutes with them in the whole week. So I have to spend considerable amount of time making sure they understand what they have to do afterwards. Students usually have this conception that you have to teach them, and at least my students, and that you have to teach them, and that you have to explain everything. And I think this is an educational gap most of our students have at university level, that they are not taught how to be independent learners. They don't know how to research. They don't know how to find the correct information without failing into fake information. So it's a huge task, I think, that it's not our fault. We cannot fill that gap in this very tiny space of time we have with them. So I think that's another drawback problem of this situation. Our students tend not to be independent.
May I say something? I was just thinking about what Paulina was saying now, and probably it comes from our experience abroad and how tough it was, and then teaching abroad as well. So I was teaching interaction linguistics in Leeds, and I was a non-native, and my students were native speakers of English, and studying like modern languages, say. And yeah, it was lectures and then seminars and workshops, and then a research project, all in one module. So when I first got back, which is the beginning last year, I had that in mind. You know, my students know, like they said I was teaching, you know, sort of quantum physics, because I was like, yes, and showing them all the, you know, like spectrograms and waveforms and all that. And then I began working with my team and beginning to understand that is not really the way it was taught, and I was not expected to do that necessarily, and that I had to tone down things. And well, there was a change in our in our program, so that also implied that it's more oriented to TEFL. So in that sense, it did help, you know, to be given those you know, those suggestions. But of course I became immediately or very aware that the teaching. I also studied at Universidad de Chile, so that meant in back in the day. So I also just, you know, sort of saw my you know, sort of all the academics as authorities, and I never questioned anything, and I was not expecting to be taught
exactly
the way I have to teach now. I see the bad sides and the good sides. I see the good sides in terms of we are training, well, where I work at least, we are training teachers. So it's good somehow that they can take things from your own practice, you know, so they can put them into practice later on and those kind of things. But I also miss just the fact of having to, you know, just talk and then go and do this.
Yeah, it happened basically the same to me. I was in Glasgow, and when I came back, I was like, okay, I worked on phonetics as well. My PhD is in phonetics as well. And I said, okay, I want to work this from the sociolinguistic perspective. And I got into university, and it was basically like, no, you cannot change that. We've been teaching this class for the last 30 years, and this is the way it's supposed to be. And like, oh my God. It's like, yeah, but I think phonetics has changed over the last 30 years.
You have to find chances, you know, like what I'm doing is essentially doing everything I want to do with my seminar groups, with my master's students, you know, with my.
I agree.
Supervision.
I agree with you.
But students in general, these universities this is like a strong resistance to do the things in the same way it has been done like forever. So that's probably because I was fired. Anyway, it was like, we have to learn how to do things differently, and this capacity of adaptation that we have probably because we studied abroad. Not everyone has them. Has it. Now students that are coming just from these high schools, in which education has been replicated in the same way as in the last 50 years. They come to our universities, and again, they are facing exactly the same, but a bit more difficult. So there is like a strong resistance to do things differently.
And changing the methodology. I think it's funny because I think I come from the opposite side of life to you, because I'm a primary teacher. So I trained in Britain. There was everything is practical, differentiated, hands-on. So then when I came to teach in the university, I had the opposite problem initially of having to make my teaching more formal and slightly more lecture-like, and then learning, so going from one extreme to the other, and then refining the balance, like what you both have said. You have a style that you like, a way of teaching you like doing. So what you do is initially you accept the rules, and then very quietly you start sort of making little adjustments so that you can put your touch and your personality and the way you like teaching back in. But you tend to have to do it quite, as they say, piola, and just add it bit by bit.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I would like to tell, okay, the teachers here who were invited to this, okay, webinar. I think that after having listening, okay, all your opinions, experiences, and all that, I think we are very lucky here at UDA English Center. We are a group. This is a new, let's say, a group of people and a new unit that was created for I think it started in let's say in 2014, something like that. And we have created all of our programs. We have created Moodle. We have created our own methodology. We have our own model, okay, to teach English for the different, say, programs. So I feel like we are kind of free to do things, to improve, to show that we can do things. And autonomy has been something very interesting for us. And we have been developing autonomy on our students. Since the moment they come to UEC, they have to enroll themselves by their own. In other programs, they enroll the students on Moodle. We do not do that. We give the instructions and they have to enroll themselves. So they have a whole structure to work in autonomy. And I think it has been, it has proved to be good. And then now that we are teaching under these conditions, we have been kind of letting the students work on Moodle, in autonomy, and later on, teachers go to the synchronic classes and they revise what they have learned. They give feedback, they ask questions, they interact, okay, on the, let's say, activities they have developed on their own. So I think it has been very interesting the way students are learning, and they have proved or they have shown that it is something that they like to do. They also feel very happy to enjoy English in a different way, not to be sitting kind in the normal class. So we are giving them the opportunity, as we say, and as we have created a motto to say, live English. English is to be lived, not to be learned exactly, okay? So I think that we are very lucky, and I wanted to share that experience with you.
Miss Pilar, I think that's one of the strengths of the Institute of the UEC, that you started the Institute as a be-learning program, right? So the students were, as soon as they got into the Institute, they were already aware that they had to learn using online learning programs as well as classroom interaction. So that's why when this whole pandemic started, I had the feeling that UEC was more than prepared, because the teachers were already trained. The students were already used to the system, right? So they were already aware of how to work independently as well as in the classroom. While the rest of us, at least in other universities, had to learn, get used to, and start feeling comfortable with that. So, as I said before, I think UEC was in the best position to face this pandemic, in my opinion. Having said that, I think it's time for us to go now. So first of all, I would like to thank our three presenters, Veronica, Jacqueline, and Paulina. I don't know if you would like to say something before to say goodbye, and then Ms. Pilar is going to close this this webinar.
No, I was just going to say thank you for inviting me, and it's been a very good experience because it's nice to be able to share experiences and ideas with colleagues and feel that you are understood yourself and that you're facing the same challenges, because every now and then you do wonder whether it's just you know, that you should be doing better or you should know more, and how come you don't know how to do it. So it's nice when you hear that we're all facing similar challenges, and that we're all trying to do our best, but that it is a very difficult situation we're living through.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well for your invitation. Yeah, it's really, like Jacqueline said, it's really good to have, you know, this safe space somehow to share what our experiences have been and the ways we're trying to improve and deal, essentially, because it's crazy time. Some weeks are really good, some weeks are just awful. Yeah. So it's the moon, they say. Okay, but well.
Yeah, also want to thank you. It's been very insightful. And I think this is a time of building up a community. Yes. I mean, we have to all support each other and suffer together.
That's the point.
Yeah,
especially
I know.
suffer.
Especially suffer together, because it's been a nightmare for everyone, and exactly for each other, and share experiences and share tips and share everything. Cool. Share love. We need love.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for inviting me.
I've
really had a good time.
Thanks, everybody.
Pilar, would you like to close this webinar? Yeah. Final words?
Yeah, it has been great to share with all of you our experience and to hear from you also. I think, yeah, as someone said, I think we are a community and we have to share. We need to share our experiences and our feelings. And I think it's a great possibility to talk with teachers who are doing similar things and to see that we are not the only one. We live in the desert. We live in the middle of the desert, isolated. So it is great to see someone who is working in Patagonia, beautiful Patagonia, and to see that she has, Jacqueline has similar troubles that we might have here, or in Santiago, or in El Biobío. So I think the teachers should join and talk and have the possibility to talk and make comments and share experiences. And we are teaching English in a country which is also isolated, and it doesn't have the connections with with other English-speaking countries. Our students are just learning English with us, and now with the possibility that the technology is offering them. So I think it has been a great opportunity to see that we are not alone, and that we share the same problems and also the same love for teaching. That's great, I think. So thank you very much. We are very proud that we have this opportunity.
Bueno, muy bien. Gracias, Mauricio. And this is with this, I would like to end this webinar. Thank you very much to all of you for being here tonight, and hopefully we will see each other again soon. Bye-bye.